The baby is being a baby. Baby. Fucking baby ass. Yeah. I'm gonna start reading. I'm gonna read some stuff about evolution. That's right. We're gonna read about Charles Darwin, motherfucker. The motherfucking Charles Darwin, Erasmus Darwin, Thomas Huxley, Julian Huxley, nigga. You feeling me, blood? Yeah. 1 + 1. Quick maths. Smoked trees. Check. Bing. At 4. Chilling in the corridor. Your dad is 44. 44. Call a man for a draw. Let him know. When I see him, I'm gonna spin his jaw. No sauce. No sauce. Boom. You're done. Pop, ping. Right there. Skitty, boom. Yeah. Boop. You're done. Skia. The thing goes pop. And a root toot. You're done. You're done, son. And you're done, son. Where's the...
Where's the Kush? Oh, here it is.
You did it.
You're listening to DJ Smokey.
All systems are go. The codeine demons finish preparing an evil plane. I feel like I'm ballin'. Feel like I'm ballin'. Yo, what's up, bro?
You never did this shit, so my niggas front. You did it. You never did this shit, so my niggas front. All this money that I'm stacking in, I'm sending a trend. Commas after comma, if it's money, I'm coming. I got bands, Mr. Drummond, fuck the hoes that you love. You did it. You never did this shit, so my niggas front.
DJ Smokey. DJ Smokey. DJ Smokey.
Yeah. Charles Darwin's a dumbass. He inbred. Inbred ass nigga. I feel like I'm ballin'. 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 You feel like I'm ballin'. We must meld minds. DJ Smokey, do you hear us? Do you hear our call?
Invading Earth. Oh my god, watch out for the Kush aliens. Where's fucking Kush aliens? Oh my god.
A blast of energy exploded, and on he sped.
All this money that I'm stacking in, I'm sending a trend. I got bands, Mr. Drummond, fuck the hoes that you love. I got bands, Mr. Drummond, fuck the hoes that you love. You never did this shit, so my niggas front. You did it. Feel like I'm ballin', feel like I'm ballin', feel like I'm ballin', I feel like I'm ballin', I feel like I'm ballin', I feel like I'm ballin', feel like I'm ballin', I feel like I'm ballin'.
Feel like I'm ballin'. I feel like I'm ballin'.
The laser scans the object, breaks down the molecules, and stores them digitally.
I feel like I'm ballin'. All this money that I'm stacking in, I'm sending a trend. Commas after comma, if it's money, I'm coming. I got bands, Mr. Drummond, fuck the hoes that you love. You never did this shit, so my niggas front.
Feel like I'm ballin'.
Feel like I'm ballin'.
Feel like I'm ballin'. Feel like I'm ballin'.
A blast of energy exploded, and on he sped.
I feel like I'm ballin'. Feel like I'm ballin'.
Feel like I'm ballin'.
Feel like I'm ballin'.
Feel like I'm ballin'.
You never did this shit,
So you niggas front.
you never did this shit.
So my niggas front. You never did this shit. So my niggas front. You're older than me, for fuck's sake. It's been pretty nice here this winter as far as winters go here. It didn't even snow till January and the end of December. My cat's trying to break out his kennel. He's getting sick of being in the kennel, but he's healing well. He thinks he can go run around. What do you mean about forgiveness? Just because I forgive you doesn't mean I have to talk to you. Jesus said, "Do not throw pearls before swine, and don't give to dogs what is sacred." My diet, I don't know, I'm not really on a diet. I haven't been on a diet in a long time. I mean, I'm just, I'm trying to eat proper nutrition. The only thing is, when I lift weights, I'll try to eat more protein, and then if I take a break from lifting, then I will eat less protein. That's about the only thing I do. I've been eating a lot of macaroni and cheese. EBB. Really like macaroni. I make really good macaroni and cheese from scratch. The old man's doing well. He hasn't got corona and died yet. And I'm going to be 39 in April. Amazing. I got invited to a Discord. Hooray. Can't wait till I get banned. I'm going to get banned in Philosophical Checkmate. That's my next one. Guess. Oh, Darth Dawkins is up in...
One of the keys to God denialism is to pretend that you're not denying God. You just simply say, God's not relevant to the rational sphere of discussion. But that's still God denialism. Okay? If you don't reference God, you're denying God.
Amen! Preach!
Okay, so this is what Susskind is. So I'm going to finish up. It's about another 2 minutes.
So true.
What else could possibly account for the complexity of a human being, the human brain, and so forth? And we eventually...
Oh, now he learned how to play lectures. Darth figured out how to use the internet, kitty. Darth Dawkins is becoming tech savvy, even though he's old and decrepit. It's true. Did you know that? He wants to get out of his cage. I have to go to the vet on Friday, and I'll see what the vet says about activity. But I'm pretty sure he's going to be in the cage for till the end of January. Meow. He wants to jump on everything. You're going to break your leg again, you moron. You don't know any better because you're just a kitty. And you don't know nothing. It's true. Oh, Antonio Subarats, he's dying. Yeah. Do you feel bad for him? This is when he started to get the cancer. Spirits in a material world.
What are vectors?
I mean, he's a horrible person. Huh. Jeez. Is he losing his hair? Like what? Jeez, cat. I let him out, but he like wants to run, and he's not supposed to be running. Antonio, you're a legend. God bless. Yeah, he told people that Patricia Steer was a transsexual with a ramshackle vagina. What a legend. The last copy. Oh my god. Speedy recovery.
Australia could be too. And,
He doesn't go on camera.
that changed it to finish today. I wanted it to finish yesterday so that at the end I could say, there you go, there's your birthday present. So that's my daughter's birthday present. Well, I thought, there. Now she's got £155 and a little bit of pride in her father, you know. So, yeah, there you go. Mind you, it could have just gone for £50, in which case it's still a bit of pride. If doing 10 press-ups under radiochemotherapy tears a lot of muscle, then it's going to be the equivalent to doing 100 press-ups.
Weird. So Conspiracy Cats is too good to acknowledge me as a human being, but he wants to email Antonio and be in a close relationship with email. It's almost close relationship with Antonio. It's almost as if Conspiracy Cats bases relationships off of what will be good for his YouTube channel, and he doesn't even care about human beings. Huh. Do you think he's a nice man? Did he just use his people for content? And all of his relationships are based on his YouTube channel content? Do you think that's nice, kitty? Holy fuck. I don't even pay attention to these people anymore. Antonio would have died. I would have had no idea. Unless you told me about it.
Each to their own. High-pitched sound. Oh yeah, so I'm no longer in a psychiatric ward. I'm now out in the community. I've been released. One second, I think there's a fridge or something. Because what I'm apparently got ears, nose and throat. And that's why I think I'm presenting myself, but instead I'm presenting myself like this. Because I've taken 2,000 micrograms of 20,000 micrograms, sorry, of THC oil. Instead of this is how I'm behaving. Super. If you look at the hashishin, where's the karma? Yeah, I prefer karma. It's super power. So please, you don't have above you a balloon. You let go, and it will reach a point where it will disappear. It's not left the atmosphere. It's just no longer resolvable. Okay, it has disappeared. Now you don't know which side it disappeared from. You don't know if it disappeared from all sides at the same time. You don't know.
Crazy. You do feel bad for him. Why? Conspiracy Cats is a dick. I can't go to Flat Earth. I'm banned everywhere. I mean, like, whatever. People die. My mom died. People, it's just, I'm gonna die. We've separated ourselves from death. It used to be all around us. Children used to die more often. Death was more common. We would used to have to kill our animals to eat them. But in this modern technological world, death is kind of foreign to us, and it's a fear of the unknown, and people are afraid of death. But if you're afraid of death, you never really live your life, and by not being afraid to die, you conquer it. Baby, you have to be in there. I know it sucks. I don't want to keep you in there. He's really having a tough time today. I let him out. I played with him, but like I'm just worried because he's like running around, you know. I don't want him to hurt his leg again. I gave him a nice treat. You got a nice treat. You should just take a nap. I'm not banned from Nathan Oakley's chat, but I can't go on his show. Chris Rock died? Yeah, I knew that. He died before I left. He was cool. Actually, I liked him. He was into poker, so I talked to him about poker a little bit. That's not why I like him. You know, I like him because he was he wasn't angry, you know. He was a kind man. He's a pretty cool guy. Sometimes I go to Nathan Oakley's and type the N-word in the chat. Jeff C died too. I don't even know really who Jeff C is that well. Should I comment? I feel so bad for my cat. He hasn't been crying this much ever. He's getting really sick of being in the cage, but he has to be in the cage. I don't know. Dorian. Oh, you can't even search Flat Earth because YouTube censorship. YouTube is so fucking gay now. I'm probably gonna get... I probably won't get banned because no one watches my stream. But if anyone watched my videos, I would instantly get banned. I mean, I kind of remember... The thing is, like, I remember back in the day not really remembering him. That's what I remember of him. I kind of remember talking to him maybe once or twice. Dorian, stop. Oh, I don't know what to do. Maybe I should just play with him for a little bit or something. But like, kind of don't want to play with him because he'll run. He's been running. calms down, I'll let him out. Poor cat. Faked his death like Andy Kaufman. I did let him out, but he's just like, he's been in a cage for a while. He has to be, though. The doctor ordered him to be in the cage for a month. But I let him out, obviously, to go to the bathroom and to, like, be out of the cage a little bit. But then he'll start, like, if he's too hyper, he'll be running around and jumping on shit, so he could hurt his arm. Poor kitty. Did you hear that, kitty? I'm gonna read stuff. Heard people talking about evolution a lot lately. I'm not a fan of it. I've read this before. I just wanted to reread it. It's a little article about a book called In the Minds of Men, Darwin and the New World Order by Ian T. Taylor. The article, this is just the article, so I wanted to learn how a lot of people can be manipulated into one religion, like creationism, and then when that's of no use anymore, you manipulate them into believing in another religion, which has a big bang and primordial soup. So the librarian recommended me a book. What's cool is that Mikhail Gorbachev and the presidential advisor Jacques Attali used the words New World Order in their books, and this book has it on the title, which is pretty cool. It's In the Minds of Men, Darwin and the New World Order by Ian T. Taylor. And this is a quote. Where is this quote from? Maybe I should get the citation. This is from, okay. So this is a quote from Gorbachev's book about the New World Order. I believe that a new structure of international relations, which I here propose, combined with the absolute superiority of democratic nations in sophisticated conventional arms, provide guarantees that are quite sufficient for genuine national security in the New World Order. In the New World Order? This is a quote from a Jacques Attali book. Movements of resistance are unlikely to produce models of development able to compete with the hyper-industrialism of the New World Order. Before I get talking about Charles Darwin, I want to talk about some cool stuff that I liked in the book. Kitty. Chill for real. One cool thing was about different things that were found that people thought were newer techniques, but were actually ancient techniques. One was about the remains of wet batteries that were found in 1939 by Wilhelm Koenig near Baghdad. It is believed that they were used for electroplating gold onto jewelry, and they're more than 2,000 years old. The process wasn't rediscovered until the 18th century AD, and there are some other cool ancient technique findings too. This is from the book. This is from the Darwin book now. Oh, you'll live. Remains of wet batteries were discovered in 1939 by Wilhelm Koenig near Baghdad. It is believed that the batteries were used for electroplating gold onto jewelry and were more than 2,000 years old. Rediscovery of this process was not made until the 18th century AD. The extensive article by Theodore A. Wertheim, 1973, deals with the controversy regarding the beginning of iron smelting from ores. Iron artifacts have been found which date early as 2500 BC. But this is disturbing, for the usual textbook sequence of Stone Age, Bronze Age, and Iron Age. The author points out that the Black Sea coast was lined with self-fluxing sands containing 77% magnetite, which could permit smelting to be carried out at the unusually low temperature of 900 degrees Celsius. A mechanical device found in 1902 by marine archaeology at Antikythera, Greece, was discovered by gamma-ray techniques in 1973 to be a mechanism of unbelievable sophistication containing an epicyclic differential gear system. The mechanism was dated at 87 BC, and thus the differential gear that we find in the back axle of the automobile today, and which was believed to have been invented during the Industrial Revolution for textile machines, was actually known to the Greeks 18th centuries earlier. This small bronze horse had been produced in 450 BC by a casting technique rediscovered in the 14th century AD. Suspected as a fake, modern technology has reinstated it as genuine. Metropolitan Museum of Art, New York, Fisher Fund, 1923. The author talks about human societies forming pyramids. When you control the top of the pyramid, you then control everything below it. This is from the book. It does not require great insight to see that the power in human society takes the form of a pyramid, in which the mindset of the general bulk of the structure largely reflects that of the mind at the top. Indeed, contrary to the common impression, modern governments are set up this way, with the apex of the pyramid, often a mere figurehead representing the unseen wielders of power immediately beneath it. To control the apex is to control the nation. There's a quote by Lord Acton that talks about the French Revolution in his essays on the French Revolution. The usual version of the cause of the French Revolution is that a grain shortage triggered rebellion in a people who had long been oppressed by a corrupt nobility and clergy. Many writers have observed, however, that there were other underlying causes, providing ample documentation to make their point. Lord Acton, in his essays on the French Revolution, writes, "The appalling thing in the French Revolution is not the turmoil but the design. Through all the fire and smoke, we perceive the evidence of calculating organization. The managers remain studiously concealed and masked, but there is no doubt about their presence from the first." Douglas Reed, 1978, 136. People love to worship, and they love religion. There is a quote by Karl Marx that says, "Religion is the opium of the people." Whether we like to acknowledge it or not, man has a built-in propensity to worship some being greater than himself. Evidence from the most primitive tribes to the medieval cathedrals of Europe and the evangelical movement beginning in the 1960s and extending into the present day attest to this. And atheism is a religion. It was declared a religion by the United States Supreme Court in 1961. Thus, atheism was formally declared to be a religion by the United States Supreme Court in 1961, together with Buddhism, ethical culture, secular humanism, and others that do not teach a belief in the existence of God. The Atheist Church of America and the American Ethical Union, for example, are both bona fide tax-exempt religious organizations. I learned about what humanism means. It's where you get an intelligent and superior person to run your life instead of a god. If you want someone to run your life, it fits in with becoming Earth Emperor because the final humanist objective is socialist world government with a humanist elite in control. One thing to keep in mind, though, is a quote by Lord Acton that says, "Power tends to corrupt, and absolute power corrupts absolutely." This is from the book Darwin. By denying an intelligent creator, or even denying that he is vitally interested in the affairs of man, then men must look to man as the intelligence necessary to run the affairs of the world. This is humanism. Julian Huxley, grandson of Thomas Huxley, and one of the most foremost evolutionists of his day, was an unabashed atheist. He pointed out in 1959 that Darwin's real achievement was to remove the whole idea of God as the creator of organisms from the sphere of rational discussion. The final humanist objective is socialist world government with, of course, the humanist elite in control. To some, this may appear the rational answer to the world's problems. Yet, a moment's thought on some of the horror stories made public and that are associated with big government should call to mind Lord Acton's warning in 1887. Power tends to corrupt, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. Okay, I'll talk about Charles Darwin now. His Bro. You're okay. Oh my goodness. Cat. Wow. Okay, Charles Darwin. His grandfather was Erasmus Darwin. Erasmus wrote Zoonomia, which had the essence of the theory of evolution. Erasmus was also the founder of the Lunar Society. It's from the book. Erasmus was a physician, something of a poet, an instrument of the Industrial Revolution, an author of a massive 2-volume work, Zoonomia. This work contained within it the essence of the theory that his grandson would announce to the world half a century later. The founder of the Lunar Society, Erasmus Darwin, had, in 1794, written a book called Zoonomia, in which he outlined his theory of evolution, anticipating not only Jean-Baptiste Lamarck's ideas, but even the theory of natural selection. This book had the distinction of being placed on the Catholic Index. Its popularity among independent thinkers was thus assured. The Lunar Society was active between 1764 and 1800. It didn't have more than 14 members, and it was the most influential group of men in England. Dorian. I'm almost done with this. I guess I'll Go take care of him. You're being a baby. He's gonna hurt himself again, man. That cat is crazy. Okay, 3 members in the group were Josiah Wedgwood, founder of the famous pottery business, Erasmus Darwin, and Benjamin Franklin. While the French Revolution and earlier the American Revolution were acting out their destinies, influential forces at work in England were not only largely responsible for the Industrial Revolution, but were actively sowing the seeds of socialism. It has been acknowledged by Musson and Robinson, 1969, and Schofield, 1963, that the Lunar Society of Birmingham, which was active from about 1764 and 1800, and never had more than 14 members, was the most influential group of men in England. This group's influence continued long afterwards under the banner of the Royal Society. In an article on the Lunar Society, Lord Ritchie Calder, 1982, refers to the men it brought together as a company of merchants of light, a description used for just such a society in Francis Bacon's New Atlantis, written more than a century earlier. The Lunar Society got its name from the fact that it met monthly at the time of the full moon. Included as its members were such names as Erasmus Darwin, who was Charles Darwin's grandfather, John Wilkinson, a cannon maker, James Watt of steam engine fame, Matthew Boulton, a manufacturer, Joseph Priestley, a chemist, Josiah Wedgwood, founder of the famous pottery business, and Benjamin Franklin, a correspondent in the American colonies. These men recognized that knowledge was power, and by pooling information from various activities and investigations, they were responsible for a number of scientific discoveries that served as the driving force for the Industrial Revolution. The Darwins and the Wedgwoods believed that they were superior stock, so they bred with one another. The Darwins and the Wedgwoods, who recognized in each other all the qualities of superior people. Charles Darwin's dad, Dr. Robert Darwin, married the daughter of Josiah Wedgwood. The gross thing is that Charles Darwin married the youngest daughter of Josiah Wedgwood's, Emma Wedgwood, which means Charles married his mother's sister. Oh my God. Dr. Robert Darwin had one of the most successful medical practices in provincial England. Dr. Darwin had married the daughter of the Unitarian Josiah Wedgwood. Darwin married Emma Wedgwood, his maternal grandfather's youngest daughter. The Darwin family was intimately associated with the Wedgwood family, the same family of Wedgwood pottery fame today. Old Josiah Wedgwood was a Unitarian and friend of Darwin's grandfather Erasmus, while the chemist Dr. Joseph Priestley, the Unitarian of missionary zeal, was included in this circle of friends. Josiah's oldest daughter, Susanna, had married Robert, the son of Erasmus, and was thus Charles Darwin's mother. Thus, Charles married his mother's sister. It looks good on paper where you get one person who believes they're superior and you get another person who believes they're superior, and then they have sex and make babies. You would think that the babies of two superior people would be superior, but it didn't work out too well for Charles Darwin. Darwin's idea of inbreeding to produce superior stock can be seen to be a complete disaster in the case of his own 10 children. Of the 10, one girl died shortly after birth, another died in childhood. His youngest son, Charles, was mentally retarded and lived only 2 years. Henrietta had a serious and prolonged breakdown at 15, and 3 sons suffered such frequent illness that Darwin regarded them as semi-invalids. Darwin's last son, Charles Jr., was born mentally retarded and died 19 months after birth. Dorian, oh my gosh. Will you chill out? Some people that made evolution what it is today are Thomas Robert Malthus, Charles Lyell, and Alfred Russel Wallace. Thomas Robert Malthus wrote the essay on the principle of population. He was influenced by a made-up story about goats and dogs on an island. He made up that data in his essay, and he laid the foundation for social Darwinism. Malthus would never have had a place in history had it not been for the publication in 1798 of his essay on the principle of population and the expanded version that appeared in 5 subsequent editions. Apart from the usual textbook explanations, the incident that inspired him to write the essay in the first place is little known. According to Poligny, Malthus received the following account ascribed to Townsend by the French mathematician and revolutionary Condorcet. The scene is Robinson Crusoe's island in the Pacific Ocean off the coast of Chile. On this island, Juan Fernandez landed a few goats to provide meat in case of future visits. The goats multiplied and became a convenient store of food for the privateers, mostly English, who were molesting Spanish trade. In order to destroy the food supply, the Spanish authorities landed a dog and a bitch, which also, in the course of time, greatly multiplied and diminished the number of goats. Then a new kind of balance was restored, wrote Townsend. The weakest of both species were among the first to pay the debt of nature. The most active and vigorous preserved their lives, to which he added, "It is a quality of food which regulated the number of human species." It is the quality of food which regulated the number of human species. Townsend then applied this principle to his suggested reform of the poor law. The poor law in England was instituted so that the poor should never go hungry, but also that they should be compelled to work. Townsend pointed out that the usual legal methods of compelling the poor to work were accomplished by much trouble, violence, and noise. Hunger will tame the fiercest animals, and among the poor will teach them civility, obedience, and subjugation, while goading them on to labor. Fortunately for the British poor, Townsend's reforms were never introduced, but Malthus became quite enthusiastic with this approach, as we shall see. The story of the goats and dogs certainly inspired thinkers like Malthus and later Charles Darwin, but, as Polanyi points out, it was only a half-truth. Juan Fernandez duly laid the goats, but there is no record that dogs were ever landed. Even if dogs had been landed, Polanyi argues, the goats inhabit inaccessible rocks, while the beaches were teeming with fat seals, much more engaging prey for wild dogs. It is seen that Malthus contended that there is a discrepancy between the rate at which population multiplies and the rate at which sustenance for that population can increase. When he wrote his essay in 1798, there was no real data work from the first national census in Britain was taken in 1801. But even the 1801 census data could not help, since this was a single event and could not be used to determine the rate of population growth. Malthus had actually based his vital formula on a selection of population figures taken at random from a variety of unreliable sources. He had made assumptions and approximations and juggled the figures until they came out neatly as the difference between a series of geometric and arithmetic progressions. The increasing series of numerals, of course, appear very precise and scientific after all. Figures cannot lie, or to quote another source, the mathematical basis for the Malthus argument is as certain as the multiplication table. Gertrude Himmelfarb. It is quite impossible for Malthus to estimate how much land was totally or partially uncultivated, how much was fertile, and what it could produce in tons of food per acre, and so on. Even the time between generations was quite uncertain, so that the evidence to support his thesis was extremely speculative. All that can be properly said is that on paper, populations will tend to expand to fill the allotted space. That is not all, however. Not only was the evidence faulty and inconclusive, but the very nature of the theory precludes the possibility of obtaining the evidence to prove it. If the population can never exceed the food supply, it can never be known that it is in fact the food supply that checks the population. For instance, other factors could check the population before the limit of food supply is reached, and Malthus conceded moral restraint as one of these factors. Charles Lyell is the acknowledged father of evolution, and he came up with the uniformitarian principle. Charles Lyell, later Sir Charles, a quiet man with rather poor eyesight and kingmaker to Darwin, the acknowledged father of the theory of evolution, died in 1875 and was buried in London, Westminster Abbey. Lyell's uniformitarian principles applied to the fossils and rocks is really equally as important as the theory ascribed to Darwin. However, history has somehow managed to allow Darwin's name to eclipse those who went before him. Alfred Russel Wallace kind of got screwed over because his ideas were pretty much stolen and taken over by Darwin. The first edition of Darwin's Origin didn't come out until 24th November 1859, but Wallace wrote stuff way earlier. Wallace's Sarawak Law is where the whole man has evolved from some ancestral pre-existing ape came from. Wallace's Ternate paper contained the survival of the fittest process, which was the key to the theory of evolution. The first edition of Origin was published in London on 24th November 1859. Origin of Species, Darwin. During his expedition to Sarawak in the Malay archipelago, Wallace published a paper in 1855 entitled On the Law Which Has Regulated the Introduction of New Species. It was concisely written and enumerated 10 facts dealing with such observations as the geographical distribution of species. It also set out the entire theory of evolution, except for how the species change. The question of how was never far from Wallace's mind, as he wrote in his 1855 paper, to discover how the extant species have from time to time been replaced by new ones down to the very last geological period is the most difficult and at the same time the most interesting problem in natural history of Earth. That's from Brackham, 1980, page 319. Wallace's Sarawak Law, as it came to be called, basically said that every species had come into existence coincident both in time and space with a pre-existing closely allied species. This is exactly what the modern theory of evolution teaches in saying, for example, that man has evolved from some ancestral pre-existing ape. By this time, Charles Lyell and Charles Darwin had become friends. Upon reading Wallace's publication, it was evident to both that here was a serious threat to, priority of publication of the work that Darwin had been struggling with for more than 20 years. Exactly 3 years after writing his Sarawak Law, Wallace became ill on the small island of Ternate in the Moluccas between New Guinea and Borneo. The date was February 1858, and as he recorded in his diary, he had intermittent fever. One night during his illness, he recalled the essay by Malthus, which he had read some years before. Suddenly it all became clear in a moment's revelation. He wrote, "It occurred to me to ask the question, why do some die and some live? And the answer was clearly that on the whole, the best fitted lived. From the effects of disease, the most healthy escape. From enemies, the strongest, the swiftest, or the most cunning. From famine, the best hunters, or those with the best digestion, and so on. Then I at once saw that the ever-present variability of all living things would furnish the materials from which, by the mere weeding out of those less adapted to actual conditions, the fittest alone would continue the face. There suddenly flashed upon me the idea of the survival of the fittest. The more I thought it over, the more I became convinced that I had at length found the long-sought-for law of nature that solved the problems of the origin of species." A few days later, Wallace wrote out his Ternate paper, which he entitled "On the Tendency of Varieties to Depart Indefinitely from the Original Type." This was the document that contained the long-sought-for key to the theory of evolution. Survival of the fittest was the mechanism, the how, by which the process operated. The Ternate paper contained in complete form what is today known as the Darwinian theory of evolution, and Darwin received a copy from Wallace in June 1858. 12 months later, Darwin published the book for which he is best known, On the Origin of Species. Even this title was taken from Wallace's Ternate paper, but Wallace's name was only mentioned in 3 minor places within the text. Charles Darwin received Wallace's Sarawak paper in 1855, years before Origin came out in 1859, and Charles Darwin was shocked that someone else knew as much as he did about the evolutionary theory. So Darwin's buddy and mentor, Charles Lyell, got Darwin working on writing a book immediately. 3 years later, in 1858, Darwin got Wallace's Ternate paper, which gave the entire theory along with the key, survival of the fittest, which Darwin didn't get until after he read that, I guess. So Charles Lyell and Joseph Hooker told Darwin to write a shorter version for publication quickly, and then Lyell and Hooker presented some crappy documents of Darwin's to the Linnean Society meeting before presenting Wallace's Ternate paper, so Darwin got credit for the theory too, even though it should have just been Wallace. So when the theory came out, it was known as Darwin-Wallace theory, but when Wallace's name quickly got dropped because he was born on the wrong side of the tracks and he got into too much spiritualism. Shortly after its inception as the Darwin-Wallace theory, the name Wallace was dropped for reasons that will soon become apparent. Thereafter, the theory of evolution has always been associated exclusively with Darwin's name, although in recent years there has been a move on the part of some with the scientific establishment to drop Darwin's name and elevate the theory to the law of evolution by fiat rather than by facts. What? Elevate the theory? Oh my god. Dude, this guy is a moron. Like, he doesn't understand science. Hopefully his history isn't fucking shitty as his science understanding. What the fuck? Scientific theories don't get elevated to laws. Laws and theories are different. Laws are observation of physical phenomena, and a theory is an explanation of an observation. Fuck, I don't even want to read any of this anymore because that's stupid shit. So Darwin, he finally went to sleep. Finally calm down, buddy. So Darwin has his own theory now, and now you have to advertise it. One of the biggest advertisers at the time was Thomas Huxley. Basically what they did was what Carol Quigley says, where you get groups, organizations, people, etc. that the bourgeois cattle think are all separate. But they're really connected, and you get them all to say, go evolution, go Darwin. Then the bourgeois cattle will say, yay evolution, yay Darwin. No, this is from Carol Quigley's book, talking about. This is basically how propaganda works, or how they push like lies like evolution. The greater part of its influence arose. The greater part of its influence, the Times Magazine, I think it's talking about, arose from its position as one of several branches of a single group, the Milner Group. By the interaction of these various branches on one another, under the pretense that each branch was an autonomous power, the influence of each branch was by the interaction of these various branches on one another, under the pretense that each branch was an autonomous power, the influence of each branch was an autonomous power. The influence of each branch was increased. Gosh, I can't fucking read. By the interaction of these various branches on one another, under the pretense that each branch was an autonomous power, the influence of each branch was an autonomous power. See, he wrote that twice. That's why I'm getting fucked up. Okay, so by the interaction of these various branches on one another, under the pretense that each branch was an autonomous power, the influence of each branch was increased through a process of mutual reinforcement. The unanimity among the various branches was believed by the outside world to be a result of the influence of a single truth, while in reality it was the result of the existence of a single group. So you have one group that controls newspaper, a book, TV show, university. Okay, prestigious university. So then they'll put out an article in the magazine about evolution, put out a book about evolution, put out a university lecture, put out a television show. And so you think these are all independent, autonomous people agreeing with each other independently because they're seeing the same truth, but in reality there's this group that's directing them all to basically parrot this lie. But you think it's true because there's so many supposedly autonomous organizations that are people that are agreeing. And it's actually a logical fallacy, but people will still think it's true because it's what argumentum ad populum. Thus, a statesman, a member of the group, announces a policy. About the same time, the Royal Institute of International Affairs publishes a study on the subject, and in Oxford, Donne, a fellow of All Souls and a member of the group, also publishes a volume on the subject, probably through a publishing house like G. Bell and Sons of Farber, allied to the group. The statesman's policy is subjected to critical analysis and final approval in a leader in the Times. While the two books are reviewed in a single review in the Times Literary Supplement, both the leader and the review are anonymous, but are written by the members of the group. And finally, at about the same time, an anonymous article in the Round Table strongly advocates the same policy. The cumulative effect of such tactics as this, even if each tactical move influences only a small number of important people, is bound to be great. If necessary, the strategy can be carried further by arranging for the secretary to the Rhodes trustees to go to America for a series of informal discussions with former Rhodes scholars, while prominent retired statesmen, possibly a former viceroy of India, is persuaded to say a few words at the university of a plaque in All Souls or New College in honor of some deceased warden. By a curious coincidence, both the informal discussions in America and the unveiling speech at Oxford touch on the same subject. The belief system of a whole generation can be turned around by a handful of intelligent men. One may well wonder how such a grand cover-up was possible. It is not difficult to surmise how, when something of the conspiratorial nature of the 19th century British science, with T.H. Huxley as the Grand Master, is understood, it has been exposed by William Irving, 1955, and more recently by Cyril Bibby, 1972. The latter describes how the X-Club, the members could never agree on a name, was formed by Thomas Huxley in 1864 and consisted of 9 members who, with one exception, were all presidents and secretaries of learned societies. The one exception was Herbert Spencer, whom we shall meet in the final chapter. These 9 were men of top of their profession, handpicked for their views and holding personal influence on almost every famous scientist in the world, as well on many distinguished radicals. Neither Darwin nor Charles Lyell were members, but their views were held in very highest esteem. The members met for dinner always immediately before each meeting of the Royal Society, at which time the strategy was plotted. By this means, British society was literally governed from 1864 until 1884 by Huxley and his disciples. With their combined influence over the scientific press, it was little wonder that in 1876 report of the demise of Huxley B. Heckley was never made public. On 30th June 1860, at the Oxford meeting of the British Association for the Advancement of Science, the first edition of The Origin had been judiciously placed in sympathetic hands high in church and state. The second edition had been assured of public success by good fortune appointing Thomas Huxley to write the influential London Times book review of the previous month. There is evidence to indicate that a cadre of keen and influential minds